What's up everybody, I'm Matt.
And I'm Beth.
And today we're going to be reviewing the interior in the 2020 Shelby GT500. So, the GT500 is of course the craziest version of the Mustang here, and this one is the track package, which is even more crazy. It's an $18,500 package that brings the grand total of this car to over $94,000. Which is a lot for a Mustang, but it is one heck of a Mustang. You can go watch my video where I talk about what it's like to live with this for a week, and I already did a full review last year where I took it down a drag strip, took it around the racetrack, did a burnout in it, all that kind of stuff. It is an amazing car. It's worth that money if you do plan to track it. Otherwise, go without the track package. You get one of these for $76,000 and have just as much fun, in my opinion. But anyway, as far as the interior goes here, in the track pack version, it's a little more racy than a regular GT500.
Yeah, it's super racy, and I'm not crazy about it, but you know, that's just me. I'm not a racer girl, so.
Yeah, so I think the biggest complaint probably for you is these seats, right?
Yeah, I'm not enjoying these seats. The bolstering is bolstering, and it's bolstering me too much.
It's always very track focused here with these Recaro seats. You know, these are basically, I believe, the same kind of Recaros you have as an option in other Mustangs. It might be a little bit racier. The GT350 has, you know, Recaros just like this as well. And they are fantastic at holding you into place. And I personally, at least with my small little frame, I think that it's like comfortable as far as just driving around. Like, I don't think they like squeeze us in too much. It's just the fact that, you know, there's not a lot of wiggle room. Like,
right. I mean, they are fine, but just for like a daily driver, I would hate these seats. I just think that they're pulling me in way too much, and I am comfortable when I just have space, and I feel like there's not a lot of space in these. I do have space, but I'm not crazy about it. I do not like the look of these seats, and I also think that I'm like riding on a roller coaster in these seats. I don't know, I'm sorry everyone, I'm not crazy about it.
I mean, I think that they actually look kind of cool with the white accenting. I think they'd be more boring if they were just all black or something. I do like
the white accents are cool. I didn't say the white accents were bad. I just think that I'm like ready to like hop on and go 100 miles an hour. But then again, you're doing that in this car if you're on the track.
So they are definitely track-oriented seats, and you can get regular seats in the GT500. If you don't get the track pack, you can just get the standard seats, which, by the way, have power. They're heated and cooled. These seats do not have any power function. They are not heated or cooled. So this is really, you're committing to that sporty feeling in these seats. And yes, with a car like this, it probably fits, but unless you do plan to do a lot of track driving, I think that having the much more comfortable seats that are cheaper, that give you all the extra features, to me it's a no-brainer to get those seats. I have a Mustang Bullitt, and it was the same thing with that. I could have gotten the Recaros for like $2 grand more, or I could have not spent $2 grand and had my heated and cooled seats that are more comfortable, you know, if you're actually daily driving and stuff like that. Also, getting in and out of these seats with these very tall bolsters isn't great, you know, in the thigh area too.
Yeah, they're not as bad as the Civic Type R. Those are very intense, but these aren't as bad, so I will give them that.
Yeah. So anyway, they're also Alcantara, so they don't breathe great. They get a little bit warm in my observations as well. But anyway, moving on from the seats here, since they are just an option, thankfully you don't have to get. The steering wheel in the GT500 is a cool wheel, but my only gripe with that is the fact it's Alcantara wrapped. Alcantara just doesn't wear very well, and so unless you're wearing racing driving gloves or something like that, the oils will mat down this over time, and you have to do maintenance to make it look better, and it never really looks as good as it did when it was brand new, and it's a whole thing. So I'm not in love with Alcantara. Other than that, though, it's a great wheel. I mean, I have it basically in my Mustang. It's kind of the same thing, although I don't have the flat bottom part here. But it's a great 9-3 grip, nice little 10-2 notches. A lot of buttons on this wheel, though, too. That's another thing, that if you're not used to Mustangs, this can be a lot. But you get used to where everything's at. This has a few more buttons than even a regular Mustang because they put the MagnaRide controls and the steering controls over here. You also do have these paddle shifters here on the back of the wheel. The sad thing about these paddle shifters shifters is they feel very plasticky. And even in the Raptor, I believe they feel nicer than these. So I mean, Ford has nicer paddle shifters in the parts bin, and for some reason these just feel cheap. And that's the one thing that when you're spending 94 grand, having paddles like this, like you don't get plastic paddles in a PDK Porsche Cayman when you're spending 90 grand in that. Like they're metal, they feel good. These should be metal and feel nicer. They're actually a little bit loose too. So not the highest quality there, but they are nice and large, I'll give them that, and they're well placed, so I do like that about them. Moving on to the gauges here. Those are fantastic. That's one thing they did thankfully upgrade over the GT350, is you now have the digital gauges you get in other Mustangs. And they're really great. I love, the customization of them. These are the same gauges I have in my Bullet. I love these gauges. So much customization is really fun to have, with all the different colors and things. And you can also display various gauges. You can have just your trip information displayed there. There's all the track apps as well, so you can go in and have your timers, and you even have different looks for the gauges depending on what drive mode you're in. If you want, you can have it so that sport mode has a different look and track mode has a more aggressive look, and you can actually lock it into that specific look even independent of the drive modes if you want. So if you like one view over the others, you can lock it into that one mode all the time, and have the driving modes running independently. So that's great. And you can also set up your My mode in here to have it exactly how you want. And so these gauges are really cool. I've always loved them. They're also very good with how they display information, giving you your range, giving you the temperature. You even have in that top art will display the song track if you're listening to music. And I just think that they did a really good job with these gauges. It's not, as fancy as some of the others where you can have like a map displayed in the Cayman, for example, in their digital area and stuff. This doesn't have any map display, but otherwise I think they're very great gauges. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, another thing you'll notice moving on with the gauges is you have two more gauges here right above the screen. So in the Shelby's here, it's the oil pressure and oil temperature, which I'm jealous of having an oil temp gauge, because in the Bullet that's just a useless vacuum gauge, mostly useless. It's sometimes nice to have, but very rare. Oil temp is much more useful, and that's great that you get that here in the Shelby. So nice to have those. You also see this genuine carbon fiber here, which is a really cool look that you get. And I believe that's part of this carbon fiber track pack as well. And so that is genuine carbon fiber and looks nice.
Yeah, and I actually really love this carbon fiber. In the Bullet, he does not have that. And I kind of wish that it was the carbon fiber, because I think that looks really cool. But
it does look cool. I'm not a huge fan of carbon fiber, so I personally am glad they don't have that in the Bullet. But you also don't have to get that, I believe, here in the GT500. Again, you can get another trim in the lower versions. But yeah, so nice to have that. But then coming down to this center area, this is very familiar with any other Mustang, where you have this 8-inch Ford system that is okay. Now, this is the newer version of the software compared to the one in my Bullet. So it looks a little different, but it still all works the same. You have the same quadrants to everything here. The only change they made that I'm not a huge fan of is whenever you're going into the audio and you're changing radio stations, it brings up this whole sub menu showing you different radio stations. And it seems like all car companies are doing this these days, where anytime you want to change the radio station, it brings up a whole different sub menu to do that instead of just changing the station. And so it's a little bit of an extra step there. Otherwise, though, it all works great. It has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration, which is all good. And this one here does not have navigation, but if you do get the technology package in the GT500, that will add on the navigation as well as the B&O Play stereo. This one does not have that B&O Play. The B&O Play isn't a huge difference from the base stereo. I noticed that here in my week of living with this car. You just lose the subwoofer in the trunk, and otherwise it sounds very, very similar. So even if you're really into stereos, I don't know if it's worth paying the $3 grand extra for the technology package unless you want navigation and the memory seats and the one or two other things, blind spot monitoring, that you get there in that package. But a good screen nonetheless. It's pretty responsive and pretty quick. You also have nice metal volume and tune knobs here to control it, and a few other buttons there.
They're kind of a little golden too. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that is one other thing that is a subtle change here for the GT500 that most people might not be expecting, but these have a smokier, dark chrome finish than the bright chrome you get in the Bullet and any other Mustang before it, and I think that gives a nice little bit of extra aggression here for the Shelby. And then you have your little row of toggles, and it's cool that here in the Shelbys you get an actual exhaust mode switch. That's something you don't get in regular Mustangs. You have to go into the menu system in order to change the exhaust.
And don't forget, you have your CD drive.
Yeah, you do still have a CD drive in this area too, which is good for those who are into that. And it is nice because a lot of other companies are getting rid of that, and so it's great that they still have that here if you're an old school person that enjoys CDs. And so anyway, moving on to other stuff here that's subtly changed in the GT500. So the biggest change over any other Mustang is this whole center tunnel area. So they got rid of the manual handbrake, so that's kind of it's something I did miss. I kind of like having that e-brake that's manual. So you have an electronic one here in the GT500, and you have this rotary shifter, so that means you have no shifter cutout like you get in a normal automatic Mustang or the manual Mustangs. And so one upside of that is you have a nice large bin here. They did enlarge in this by, I'd say maybe an inch or two over the regular Mustang, so that's a little more usable now. You'll still see the same USB jack and power outlet in that area, and then the cup holders I believe are around in the same area as they were before, but that whole area is a little bit restyled as well, but they still are a good size cup holder. There's also the same pockets in the doors like any other Mustang that kind of extend a little bit further back even beyond the cutoff here, so they're a little bit larger than they look. And then you have the center armrest, which is just as nice and softly padded as any other Mustang. Nicely opens up in the back there, so both the driver and the passenger can access that, and it's a good amount of space, the same as any other Mustang once again, but you have another USB jack and a power outlet in there, and another little coin holder there and stuff. And so a nice little space there, and perfectly acceptable for a sports car like this. Also, other padding too to mention here. So like I said, this is nice and softly padded, but also your elbow points here on the doors are nice and soft, and you also have nice soft padding here by this screen and stuff. And so everything feels fairly plush here in the Mustang, and that goes for any Mustang, whether it's a base model or this top one. But those nice little touches do help this to feel a little more justified at its $94,000 price tag. But of course, it's not going to feel as nice in here as a Porsche or something like that. But anyway, moving on to the back seat. Now, this one, again, being the track package, does not have the back seat, so you have a rear seat delete. It gets rid of the seat belts and everything back there, so you cannot actually use that as a rear seat. But the good news is, if you don't get the track package, then you still have a normal back seat like any other Mustang. And it's usable. It's not a ton of space. Obviously, I can't test it here in this one. But you usually have about an inch of legroom to spare. It's kind of tight. Only really is good for using in a pinch. But it is a usable back seat. And then also trunk space is the same as any other Mustang. But in the Shelby here, you do have a little bit more space since you don't have that subwoofer like you get in the other upgraded Mustangs. And still just a pretty nice, wide, and pretty deep space. Although it's not as large as this space you get in like a Hellcat Challenger. Those have a deeper, wider, larger trunk. So if you're looking for the most practical of these crazy, insane, supercharged beasts, I would say that the Challengers are definitely still the best and the most practical, the roomiest of the bunch. And then this is the middle ground, and then the Camaro is the least practical of the bunch. But yeah, so overall, the GT500 interior, I mean, this is very appropriate for a track car. If you're going to have these aggressive seats, you strip out the back seat. The Alcantara wheel gives you a little bit of extra grip around corners and stuff like that. So for all that kind of stuff, this car certainly makes sense. I just think if we were to actually own a GT500, we would get the regular seats and all that kind of stuff. And so it's nice that Ford gives you the option,
Right, but for a track car, I think this is perfect. I mean, if you're constantly going to the track or going a couple of times a month and this is the only car you use, like, perfect. I think it's really great. But just for, driving around town and stuff, I'm not crazy about it, but hey, I mean, everybody has their different things, and that's great.
Yeah.
But other than the seats, I think it's a really great car. It's really, really fun. I love the exhaust. The sounds are super cool. It's just great.
Yeah, and this interior is also really nice to live with. I mean, I'm on my 4th Mustang now. We've owned them for over 5 years now. They're really great road trip vehicles. All the little storage spaces and stuff are great, and it's, a very livable car. One of the little storage space I forgot to mention, a lot of people overlook, is this little sunglasses case you have here to the left of the wheel, which is just a nice little extra thing that you don't get in the other competing vehicles. And I love putting my sunglasses in there every day, and having all those little spaces is nice. They really thought out this interior well.
Yeah, I think we're big fans of the Mustang, regardless of which one it is.
Yeah.
So.
But anyway, let us know your thoughts on the Shelby GT500 interior in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.